How did you get involved in this story? I mean, I know you can't reveal too many things in your sources, but how did you start working on this? And how long did it take you? And what can you share about your process?
The documents were given to me by someone who's close to the case. And then I conducted interviews on my own and did a lot of research. And this is part of an ongoing larger investigation I'm doing that really combines just synthesizing material in these court documents with shoe leather. So this part of the investigation took me about a month.
Wow.
And as I said, it's been reported in bits and pieces. For example, the story about the dirty diaper was reported by El País, but what I introduce here really are the gritty details about the participation of Las Vegas Sands and Sheldon Adelson. And another point that's important to make is that Adelson has this really isn't the first time Adelson Sands has served as a front for the CIA. There was a private intelligence report, and I have it, that was classified at the time, produced by the gambling industry in 2010. And it was about what was taking place at Las Vegas Sands in Macau, which is part of it's in Chinese territory. It's in the People's Republic of China. Basically, according to this intelligence report, the FBI and CIA were sending agents into the casino to spy on Chinese officials who were spending lots of money there. This was, technically public money they were gambling away. And then they would be approached and told, we have you on camera just blowing money. It's really, you're busted. We'll go public with this if you don't inform on the Chinese government for us. So that it was a classic blackmail operation trying to induce Chinese officials into becoming U.S. government informants. It was revealed in 2015, I think by The Guardian, but no one's connected it to this case until this point. And, it shows a clear pattern. So this took place in 2010, 2 years before a person named Brian Nagel left public life. He had spent decades in the Secret Service. And, people think of the Secret Service as, these grim-looking, burly guys with aviator glasses on who are whispering into their sleeves and they're shadowing the president. But the Secret Service is also one of the leading agencies in fighting cybercrime. And Nagel, I think for like 10 years, was completely focused on cybercrime. He helped set up the various divisions, working with the FBI, working with U.S. intelligence agencies that would have been on the front lines of trying to take down WikiLeaks when WikiLeaks came online in 2010. So Nagel in 2008, he quits and he becomes the director of global security for Sheldon Adelson. These sorts of collaborations with the CIA start taking place with Las Vegas Sands. I mean, who would be perfectly positioned to make those collaborations possible? Who was actually awarded with the CIA Medal of Distinction for his work in collaborating with intelligence agencies like the CIA? It was Brian Nagel, and he's right there working with Zohar Lahav, who recruited David Morales. So up until this point, a lot of the reporting we've been seeing from the New York Times, for example, contains caveats where they say it's not clear what role American intelligence played or if there was any role. But I think it's fairly clear if you read my investigation. And I'm also, quoting a lot of the testimony from former employees and a former business partner who say without any hesitation or qualification that UC Global was working on behalf of American intelligence.
And how does this connect to what the recent revelations about CrowdStrike in terms of Assange's role? I mean, I think that there's been such a campaign against Assange and they've turned him into this weirdo and, the media presents him as this really unsavory character. So that even people who you would think would care just on kind of basic liberal, standard issue liberal grounds don't seem to care. And it's one of these gaslighting things, right? Where he is being spied on. And then if he says that, he's accused of being, a conspiracy theorist. And people who quote that are accused of being conspiracy theorists. And then it seemed like he did go a little bit insane, understandably, living in the conditions in which he was living. But something that's lost in all of this, and something that we now know more than ever because of these released transcripts, is that really the Russian hackers had nothing to do with WikiLeaks. And, Assange himself has admitted that there probably were people who did that from the Russian, from the Russian government, but those weren't his sources. So this is kind of an interesting dovetailing of both of those stories.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And I can't say for certain who provided the DNC emails to Julian Assange. And I'm not going to even make an argument one way or the other. I would even say, it would be completely within reason to believe that the Russian government would have done something like that. Why would they have wanted Hillary Clinton, someone so hostile to them, to be president? And this would have been retaliation in almost an elegant form compared to a retaliation for what the U.S. had done to Russia, which was to, balkanize the country and attempt to surround it with NATO military bases. So, that's possible. But here we have an investigation into who hacked the DNC email servers being carried out not by the FBI, but by a private contractor, which is sort of tied to the Democratic Party, run by someone who's an MSNBC contributor and former FBI agent named Sean Henry. And we've been raising questions. Yasha Levine wrote a piece for The Baffler back in 2017, raising serious questions about CrowdStrike and their attribution. I've been doing it then. We were called lunatics. But the servers had disappeared, that they never produced the servers. They never provided receipts for their claim that Russia's GRU hacked the DNC emails. And now that the Trump administration has managed to compel the release of these congressional transcripts, you have Sean Henry under oath testifying before Congress that he has no evidence that Russia hacked the DNC. So that doesn't mean Russia didn't do it. It just means that no one has any evidence, and that CrowdStrike has essentially been kind of lying about their attribution. Right. And it's funny because these people will say anything on Twitter or in the New Yorker or on MSNBC, but when they get under oath, they're telling them, they're singing a very different tune. Well, so how does this connect
they take
to
the rule of law seriously at all? So it also, I agree with their assessment of MSNBC, but
yeah, well, if this was a serious investigation, why wasn't Julian Assange interviewed?
I know. So Matt Taibbi and I had Aaron Mate on, your colleague at the Gray Zone, about this, and I don't think I even realized that Assange had not been interviewed, which makes no sense. If you really want to get to the bottom of this, why wouldn't you be interviewing the person?
He requested to be interviewed, actually. He was in an embassy. It wasn't like he was hard to find.
Right. Has anyone seen Julian Assange?
Yeah, he's in one of 3 rooms in London, so
go
get him.
Have you seen anyone kind of acknowledge the importance of these revelations? Has anyone said anything remotely like, oh, I guess we didn't have evidence for a lot of the things that we were peddling, or are people just full steam ahead?
I just, you mean with my story or with CrowdStrike?
Either one.
Well, with everything we do at the Gray Zone, I mean, we're always certain that mainstream media won't pick up on it. Right. I don't know. It's like, even though they know it's true, they somehow compartmentalize, or they just say the Gray Zone, we just can't trust it for some reason, right, even though it's just clearly true. In this case, no remotely mainstream person has shared this story, commented on it. I mean, part of that has to do with just the generalized hatred of Assange and elite corporate media culture.
Right.
But I mean, we're talking about a gigantic attack on the First Amendment. We're talking about violations of civil liberties, the shredding of the Constitution by Mike Pompeo and the Trump administration. And this all happened under the watch of the Trump administration, but this isn't something the resistance is interested in. They're more interested in Pompeo firing an inspector, which is bad. It's in kind of an authoritarian move, but what took place here, I'll give you another example of something that took place. The apparent CIA contractor's CEO, David Morales from UC Global, proposed robbing Baltasar Garzón's office, the office of this, eminent Spanish lawyer who was representing Julian Assange. 2 weeks after he proposed that to his employees, 3 men wearing hoods broke into Baltasar Garzón's office, rifled through files. It's not clear what was taken. They took no belongings. And this was reported in mainstream Spanish media. So, you put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah.
Pompeo bragged about all of this. He went to Texas A&M last year and gave a speech before the students. And he said, hey, I was CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole.
Yeah.
We had a whole training course on that.
And then he said it really speaks to the marvel of the American experiment or something like that.
Yeah. And the students are all laughing and then they cheer. They break into applause. So that's the culture we're dealing with here. It's very hard to get any traction with these stories, no matter how bonkers they are and how, really upsetting.
Why
they
does...
are,
sorry, cut you off.
No, go ahead.
Why does Pompeo hate Assange so much? Like, it's funny because we think of the Democrats as being so anti-Assange, and obviously there's overlap between the Dems and the Republicans, especially when it comes to foreign policy. Though, of course, the resistance never focuses on that. Somehow the resistance is always focused on Trump being too soft on Putin or Trump being Putin's boyfriend. The hawkishness is never a problem for them. But why does Pompeo hate Assange so much?
Mike Pompeo is a right-wing national security hardliner who is a former Army officer, West Point graduate, and that's just the way those guys think. That's the way spooks think. The CIA wanted Assange. It's like how the FBI wanted Leonard Peltier, but even stronger. And when Mike Pompeo came in, he's like, I'm going to give them this. His speech that he delivered at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which was completely focused on Julian Assange, starts off with this bizarre diatribe against Philip Agee. For those who don't know, Philip Agee was a former CIA officer who became a whistleblower. He was one of the first whistleblowers, and I think he was the first CIA whistleblower. Just was sick of being involved and having knowledge of, assassination plots around the globe and coup attempts and just violently undemocratic activity. So he took all these files and handed them off to leftist publishers, anti-imperialist publishers. There was a magazine called Counter Spy, which Agee helped oversee, that produced articles out of all of these files and just showed what a criminal operation the CIA was running. And Agee was a wanted man, so he found sanctuary in Cuba. I really doubt Mike Pompeo knew who Philip Agee was. And but the way he speaks in that speech, it's like he hates Philip Agee. He's like, and then he starts ranting about the little Philip Agees, and it's Assange, and he speaks about Assange with such vitriol. It's worth reading the speech, but then when you listen to him deliver it, it's kind of like, he's kind of going through the motions, but he's also himself willing to serve as the kind of face and voice of the most hardline national security elements. He's kind of like much less intelligent John Bolton, or like sort of, less of an evil genius, although Bolton isn't so bright. I think he ate John Bolton.
What did you say?
But I think he may have eaten John Bolton.
Yeah. That's where Bolton's been. And what, do you have any idea what Trump's thoughts? I mean, not to do the Trump psychoanalysis thing, but do we know anything about Trump's position on Assange?
I'm working on a piece that will hopefully, I'm just starting it, and I have some idea about how Trump kind of did a 180 on Assange. Because remember in 2016, he was always like, thank you, WikiLeaks.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, they should release. What did he say? One of the things people accuse him of is because he encouraged Russia to hack.
It was so obviously a sarcastic comment.
I know. What did he say, though? It's funny.
He's like, Russia, are you listening? Something like that. Russia, if you're listening, go for it.
Yeah.
That at that moment, Donald Trump sent the signal to Russia to execute the campaign, and Putin in his computer cave pushed a button that hacked all the files of Mira Tandon.
You pointed this out like a couple years ago when I interviewed you, and I can't believe that no one talks about this, which is that Podesta wasn't even hacked. He was phished.
Right.
Can you talk about this, please? Talk about, to quote Amy Goodman,
Talk about
Afghanistan.
Fishing. Talk about fishing. Afghanistan and
Idlib.
Fishing.
What?
Anyway, she called Idlib in Syria Idlib. Yeah. I'm like, you don't have to make up well, phishing, basically, if you're going to get your emails, quote unquote, hacked, if you're watching this right now, and you probably all already know this because you're not like a boomer, but someone sends you a link to something, or they basically trick you into giving your password up, and they say, I'm from Bank of America, or I'm from Yahoo, and your password has expired. Please provide it. And so that's what someone did to Podesta. And then he wrote the, director of Hillary Clinton's, it was either the DNC or it was the DNC's, cybersecurity team, and said, should I answer this? And this is the best part. They wrote back, you absolutely should. And so he writes, my password is password 1. God. That was his password.
And they said you absolutely should. They just left off the not.
Right. And then the excuse of the poor security director is, I just left out the word not. If I had just included the word not, then America would be safe and Hillary Clinton would be president.
Maybe true.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't think these emails swung the election, but that's their theory. We did learn what a corrupt, just heinously corrupt kind of hovercraft Davos elite John Podesta was.
Right.
And Julian Assange published it, and every Democrat hates him and wants him roasted now. So forget about principles like the First Amendment or international law.
Right.